What's the meeting?
Okay, planning board, we are live. We are recording. Phone lines are open. You are good to go.
Thank you, LTV. Good evening and welcome to the June 8th, 2022 meeting of the East Hampton Town Planning Board. We have two members on virtual, Ed and Sharon. See them both there. Hello. We are waiting one more member to arrive, maybe. We have three matters on for site plan or subdivision review. We have a number of matters on for our regular meeting for resolutions and other similar things. We have a public hearing scheduled at 7 p.m. and the planning board will also be engaging in the beginning of an educational effort involving groundwater protection. The agenda, the way we'll do it tonight is we'll start with the subdivision and site plan reviews, and we will get as many of those in as we can before the public hearing, which is scheduled for 7 p.m. Once the public hearing, once 7 p.m. comes, if we're still in the midst of site plan review, we'll finish that up and then go on to the public hearing. And after the public hearing, if there are any further site plan reviews, we'll do those. I'm not going to break in the middle of the site plan review for the public hearing. We'll go to the next site plan review if there are any, and then we'll do the discussion regarding groundwater protection. And I'll have a couple of words to say about that when we get there. Once we get through all that, we'll do the regular meeting, and as I said, we have a few straightforward resolutions during that time. So with all that said, we will begin with the Glen Valley Associates preliminary subdivision review. Is the applicant here on that? The applicant, I just want to make sure you're here. Well, the way it works is first, Will Highland from the planning department will present. Then we'll give the applicant the opportunity to present, and then we'll have a discussion of the board. And Vice Chair Ian Cole-Piedmont will be the point person for the board. So, Will, take it away.
Thanks, Sam. Okay, an application has been made to subdivide an existing parcel located on Mulford Avenue at Old Northwest Road in East Hampton. The parcel is zoned A residence and located within the Water Recharge Overlay District. This application was previously reviewed in a pre-preliminary form by the Planning Board on February 2nd, 2022. The applicant has submitted a narrative detailing the reasoning behind the subdivision, and modifications have been made to address the comments made in the pre-preliminary review. This project is an unlisted action pursuant to secret in Chapter 128 of the Town Code. It is recommended that the Planning Board request lead agency status for the project. As the subject property is situated in the A residence zoning district in the Water Recharge Overlay District, the formal subdivision was required to be an open space subdivision pursuant to Section 193 of the Town Code. Pursuant to Section 193, a 25% reserved area will be required. This was discussed at the pre-preliminary review, and it was determined that the 25% reserve area shall be provided. The applicant has submitted a revised survey as previously suggested by the planning department denotes the 25% reserved area adjacent to the original required scenic easement off Old Northwest Road, as well as along the subdivision property line to provide a buffer from adjacent residential properties. The planning department finds the location and design of the reserved area acceptable. The board should determine if it agrees that the application should block out the 25% reserved area on the survey separately from the existing scenic easement. Given that the parcel is located within the old file map study and urban renewal map modification application will also be required in addition to the subdivision application. The proposed subdivision would split up parcel 60 into two new lots on the old file map. Although the site is relatively flat, it appears that areas of 50% slope to greater, particularly in the southern portions of the proposed lot 2. It was determined that the pre-preliminary review that upon the submission of a formal preliminary subdivision, all areas greater than 20% slope should be illustrated on the map. The applicant has now submitted a revised survey that indicates those areas. At the previous pre-preliminary planning board review, it was determined that the applicant should submit a revised survey to go with the formal subdivision application that includes details not included on the pre-preliminary iteration. This includes areas plan details of access for both lots and whether those points of access would be from Mulford Avenue or Old Northwest Road, as well as the location of the surrounding wells and the planned sanitary systems, as there is no public water in the area. On the revised survey, access to both proposed lots are displayed to be from Mulford Avenue, as well as the location of some but not all cesspools and wells on the neighboring properties. The applicant should revise the survey to address the location of all surrounding cesspools and wells, and should additionally demonstrate on the map that they have a conforming envelope of sanitary systems on the property. So in conclusion, the applicant has submitted a revised survey that does show the location of the required 25% reserved area as an extension of the existing scenic easement off Old Northwest Road, as well as the detailed access to both lots. It kicks all areas greater than 20% slopes. This proposed subdivision will also require secret review as an unlisted action, and is recommended the planning board requests its lead agency status. As I said before, the applicant should prepare an urban renewal map modification application to address the proposed splitting of parcel 60 on the old file map study. And the applicant should also revise the survey to show a more comprehensive location of all the areas of surrounding wells and cesspools on neighboring properties, and demonstrate on the map that they have a conforming envelope for sanitary systems on the terms.
Thank you very much. Does the applicant wish to be heard on this?
Good evening, members of the board. Brian Locascio with the Adam Miller Group. I think Will did a great job of summarizing the change we made when we were before you for the pre-preliminary. I just yesterday or early this morning received a revised map from David Saskis showing the wells and cesspools. I submitted that electronically. I appreciate it probably hasn't gotten to you yet, but we will submit that because that was the one comment Will had. And otherwise, we agreed with his report. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thanks very much. Ian?
Yeah, I think this is a pretty straightforward application. There were a few outstanding items that you either addressed that we haven't seen yet or are going to. So I think this is ready to go. I first of all make a motion to declare the agency.
Is there a second?
Okay.
All those in favor of declaring lead agency status?
Aye.
Aye.
Otherwise, I think you've addressed the issues laid out in the memo, and I think address adequately. I think it's good to go.
Great.
Does anyone else have any comments on this application?
We're good.
Thank you very much.
Take care of those.
Yeah, we will. Yep.
Very well. Thank you.
The map.
Okay, I will.
Next item on the agenda is the extended storage farm storage building. Is the applicant here on that one? Okay, as the first board will go, first planning department will go, you'll have an opportunity and then the board will discuss the.
Thank you. I'm here for that.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, will you be speaking or do you?
Well, I'm the attorney, so, yeah.
All right, I'll leave it to you. However you want, Mr. Judge. Okay,
This is an application for a preliminary site plan that is proposing the construction of a 587.25 square foot storage shed on the rear of the property of the East Hampton Historical Farm Museum. For the storage of additional artifacts belonging to the East Hampton Historical Farm Museum that operates on the property. The applicant submitted a proposal as a preliminary site plan application. A formal site plan application will be needed. The planning board should offer their initial comments to the application at this time. The current proposed location of the proposed storage shed is on an open lot with surrounding residences on the neighboring properties. The applicant should discuss the location of the proposed shed with the planning board. The planning board should discuss the design of the proposed storage shed and whether it will be sufficient. The design will also require approval from the Architectural Review Board. For reference, the board could refer to the Community Boat Shop new shed site plan located at 300 Buff Road, as it has essentially the same design as the proposed shed in this application. The application will require town board approval, and the planning board should send comments to them on the proposal. Elements that are usually required on a site plan application, as you can see on the survey, such as coverage calculations, lot area and floor area for existing and proposed buildings, dimensions of property line setbacks, and dimensions between each building and existing and proposed sanitary systems are absent on the submitted preliminary site plan. However, given the application's proposed storage shed being a very minor addition, The board has the option to waive these site plan elements if they choose to and should decide if they will. The application is a very minor site plan, but because the proposed storage shed is still over 500 square feet, the planning board cannot waive the public hearing. So in conclusion, the applicant should discuss the location of the proposed storage shed with the planning board. A formal site plan application should be submitted, and the board should discuss whether they want to waive any or all of the formal site plan elements that would otherwise be required.
Good evening, Madeline Van Tarbert and Lester. Yeah, I think Will summarized it pretty well. Basically, we just want to put a small storage shed. There's a need for additional artifacts to be put somewhere, and so we tried to find the most unobtrusive location. And as Will mentioned, it's basically the same design as the community boat shop at the Marine Museum that was approved a few years ago. Just went with something that seemed appropriate for the site. And I guess that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, I'll go through the different, obviously we would appreciate if some of the site plan elements could be waived because it is very minor, but it's up for discussion. So.
Yeah, and I think this is a very straightforward application, and I'm supportive. Assuming the town board approves and the ARB looks at it and agrees. What is the resistance to the regular site plan elements? Aren't you gonna have to do that at some?
Oh, no, I mean, there's no resistance to it really. I mean, we will get a survey and everything, but there are some requirements like floor area of the existing buildings and everything like that. They're all just pretty old and they've been there. We'll get all the required elements for a survey. But if there's anything.
We require those, and if it weren't onerous or difficult to be doing a survey anyway, it seems like those would not be that much additional work.
Yeah, no, I mean.
But I'm open, you know.
Right, I mean, the survey, adding things to the survey would not be too much additional work, but like getting the existing sanitary system mapped out and everything like that, as long as we're not, I mean, we know we're not impinging on it with this. So something like that would be an extra expense, an extra layer of difficulty if it's not necessary. But, you know, if the board decides that you want everything on there, we can go that route too.
I'm curious what the other board members think. As far as, I think that the coverage and the floor areas, I think would be sort of a normal part of the project.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think the sanitary system is necessary here because it's unrelated to the project, but again, basically as many elements as you can give us that would be standard and are going to come up anyway through your new survey, I think makes sense, but I agree with you about the sanitary system. But again, curious what we're going to think.
Throw it over to the beginning of board members. Anybody want to add to those comments?
You know where the bathroom in the museum.
Right, but presumably since the museum is way down there, that our location isn't going to affect the septic. I would be very surprised. It's a separate tax lot, so I would be very surprised if their septic was anywhere near the storage shed.
It's not like you're not gonna have somebody there all the time, right?
No, it's just a storage shed, so there's no new septic or plumbing or anything associated with that.
You like to know where the septic system, when you're client, where the septic and water underground lines are?
Well, I mean,
The underground lines come from, for the water come from Cedar Street, and the septic is right to the north of the building.
So can I speak your name?
That's the main building.
Can I speak your name for the record? Your name, the record.
Brian Carabine.
Thanks.
Okay.
no, I mean, of course we would get that if we were adding onto the building or something right near it, but just the size of the site and how far back the storage shed is, I don't think it's
Town property.
Yes.
right. So we'll need.
Yeah, property.
So you think that maybe the town, the survey would make. I mean,
We do have a survey, it just doesn't have septic details on it, but.
somebody should know where the stuff is. I don't know who should pay for it, but I would say the town should block the septic water line, and if there's any fuel storage underground, and any underground utilities on the site. If Drew could do that in 10 minutes.
I suggested those are the things. So,
I don't want to reach out to
I'm going to ask if Sharon or Ed have anything they would say on this.
Yeah, I do. First, a question for you, Madeline. What is the bathroom situation? There's one bathroom that's in the museum building itself, the house?
Yes, yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
And we're not proposing any new ones.
Okay, all right. But I agree with Randy on this one, that it shouldn't be that difficult to get the information about where the septic system, sanitary system is for this. It exists somewhere, I'm sure. And as long as you're going through the process of doing a new survey, in addition to the coverage and floor area calculations that Ian was talking about, I think it would be really useful and consistent with what we ask for from everyone else to have it noted, the location noted. I think it'd be very helpful.
Sharon, did you have anything you want to add?
No, nothing else to add. I think that's probably correct. Have one survey that just maps out the whole property.
I agree with Ed and Randy, and this is part of the discussion we're going to have later. I don't see why. I think something as important as the septic system, and I realize that an application like this, where it's just a shed that has, it's no expansion of use or added parking or anything like that, the bathroom stays the same. But I think as a matter of course, it would be wise for us to ask for this kind of information on all applications, whether it's something that would affect the groundwater or maybe not. Maybe it's a long shot that this has any effect. I think we should just make it a standard practice that we ask for that. So that's my opinion.
I have sewage.
No, so I do have one question. I do have one question. Will there ever be a time when the doors of the shed are opened and items are on display?
Yes.
So it's more than a shed. It's a display. It's a open door museum or something.
Well, my understanding was that it was going to be used for extra artifacts and it wouldn't be, necessarily part of what was.
The idea is to put these lesser vehicles undercover and to display them with the doors open and then closed when we're not on the property, because we've had vandalism and we've had theft. So we would like to keep them safe, but also allow the public to see them when we are open.
Can I just have your name for the record? Your name for the record.
My name is Prudence Caroline.
Thank you. Need to make sure we have that. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. All right, let me go through the question. Should a formal site plan application be submitted? Yes. And should that site plan include information regarding the septic system?
Yes.
But
Say the water line, septic, at a minimum.
water line and septic. Should that
Yes.
be? I think there's consensus for that. Yep. Right. Does the board find the proposed location of the storage shed to be sufficient?
Yes.
Yes.
Does the board find the proposed design of the storage shed to be sufficient?
Yes.
Yes.
Should the planning board send comments to the town board regarding the application? I don't know that, what's the?
Yeah, can I, do you mind if I?
Yeah, please, go right ahead.
Madeline? Sorry. Just for clarification, this is a town-owned property, so ultimately the town board needs to approve any structure or any activity. Obviously, this facility has been operating for a while. I've spoke with some of the town board members. I don't think they have any objection to it, but ultimately they need your approval, but they also need the town board's approval. So if you would like to send comments, negative, pro, if you'd like to wait, I think it'll help them, but it's up to you.
Well, we're going to get a formal site plan at that point. So then once we have that, then we can provide such comments as would be of the town.
And along those lines, something that was that we left out of the memo on accident, you can waive Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong one. Never mind. I'm ahead of myself. I'm already out of here, you know? I'm sorry. Yeah, never mind. Yes.
One thing that we just said reminded me of something, we will have to have a public hearing for the application because besides.
Yes. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm thinking of the next.
The other thing is, since this is CPF property, are the attorneys comfortable that building this building is permitted under CPF? We've gotten into some issues with ag buildings.
Right, so this isn't an agricultural,
I mean, it's not preserved, it's under CPF, but it's not preserved as open space, it's preserved as this museum use. So it's, yeah.
Slot.
Yeah.
Okay. Does the board wish to waive any or all of the otherwise required site plan elements? I think we pretty much covered the ones that we're interested in. So
where do people park when they come to the museum?
We have parking in the front, in the back of the Lester House. And also we have parking around the corner of the property. As you can see, it's like a Trojan horse piece of property, and around the back against that fence. So we can comfortably put 50 cars there, and we do.
access off North Main Street?
No, North Main Street, right?
No, off of.
With Cedar Street.
Off Cedar Street, excuse me, off Cedar Street.
There is an access, a curb cut on North Main Street, and it's probably gonna stay there because it's a county road, has been blessed.
Because once you get a curb cut, you keep a curb
We
cut.
kind of wish it weren't there, but people use.
I'm teasing. Record creates.
Do we want the surveyor to add some parking stalls? Since we're.
Well, how is the parking delineated?
I mean, it's not currently delineated.
Well, what's the surface area on the park?
It's just dirt, right? Yeah.
Bluestone. And it's a handicap space marked out.
You do have a handicap?
Yes.
Yes. I don't think we wanted to pave it with asphalt.
No, but I think for clarity, it's good to have.
I mean, it doesn't really relate to this, I mean, in my opinion, it doesn't really relate to the scope of what we're doing here. I mean, if we were expanding the building, I would understand, but I mean, we're just adding a shed, so it doesn't increase the parking.
It's never been done essentially.
Right, but I'm not sure that this.
But I agree with Lou that, part of our job is to try to clarify things when they come to us, so.
Well, yeah. The water issue is one thing, delineating parking is different. I think there's a level involved with the water. Particularly this. Okay, so that's the next.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. We do have 7 minutes for the next, for the public hearing. I think. Eric? Eric?
Yeah. Yep, I'm sorry about that.
I just want to get a sense from you, whether we've got the next thing is the healthcare foundation.
I don't think it's going to run much longer than 7. I think we can start it.
So we'll start. All right, so healthcare foundation application next. Eric, you're going to take care of that one?
Yep.
Okay, and I see the applicant is with us, and well, and Ed, you're the board's point person on this.
Yep.
Very good. All right.
And I blame Will for that snafu on the last application because he wrote minor site plan. So even though this is really minor, it's not a minor site plan. So how dare you?
Yeah.
Making me look bad. Yeah, totally. All right, so this is a minor site plan application to construct a 34-inch tall wooden split rail fence and install new lighting throughout the parking lot of a medical arts building, which is a semi-public facility. The application has been made due to a code violation for constructing a 6-foot tall wire and metal fence without site plan approval. The parcel is zoned CI and is roughly 2.7 acres. The surrounding parcels are mostly commercial with also the Little League field and a well site for the Suffolk County Water Authority. So the metal and wire fence illustrated within a 20-foot right-of-way has been cited by ordinance enforcement as an illegal structure without site plan approval. The applicant states that the fence is to prevent unintended parking from neighboring commercial properties. According to town aerials and an on-site inspection, it appears that a small portion of the property, roughly 600 square feet in the southeastern corner, has been cleared and improved sometime in 2020 or 2021 for parking. Do you mind picking up the area? Or actually, you know what? Yeah, it's probably. I think so. Just going to try to get you an aerial photograph. Sorry for the technical difficulties today. So this portion of the property appears to belong to the applicant, and in accordance with their 2002 site plan approval is to remain as existing vegetation. Basically, this area should be revegetated with native species to the state that it was in prior to the clearing. There are some pictures, some aerial photographs of that area in the memorandum that was supplied to the board. So the fire marshal, and in a minute, I'll show you on the plan some of the areas that I'm talking about here. The fire marshal just made a point that there's a 20-foot wide access easement behind this property. That's an access lane and easement that's to serve the shops that are right outside of this building here, Luigi's, Smokin' Wolf, the couple of law firms down the road there. But that is on the neighboring property to this property. It has to remain open. When that fence was put, well, not on the property, but intended to be on the property to block the parking, it was actually put partially in that 20-foot wide access. That can't happen. But the applicants are proposing to relocate it. Additionally, the fire marshal recommends that there be no parking signs put up in that area in perpetuity. The other major aspect of this application, besides the fence, is basically a comprehensive overhaul of lighting. The applicants have submitted a comprehensive lighting plan. I won't go into all the particulars, but basically, actually, Will, can you try and get the lighting plan up? I know that is in there. No, sorry.
No, I can pull it up.
All right. But basically, the site is, the medical arts building with a U-shaped driveway around it. There are post lights throughout the site ringing around the parking lot, and those are to be replaced. The fixtures that were chosen, the 10-foot mounting height, we're fine with. However, their lumen level, the total light output, is in excess of the planning board's guidelines. It's almost twice. So we would just recommend that an alternative fixture be chosen. They're otherwise compliant. The applicants are also proposing to put bollards along the sidewalk that goes around the medical arts building. Those appear fine as far as their light levels, but they're not designed to be fully shielded. There are fully shielded bollards, and those are required by the code. This is a minor site plan, and therefore the planning board may waive the public hearing if it so decides. This will also go to the ARB. It's my understanding that the applicants are waiting until at least this initial evaluation in front of the planning board before going to the ARB. But that will be required. They will review the fence. And then it's also recommended, and Marco made a good point in here, to look at the no parking signs. Those are usually a standard design, but that's something that they'll look at. This is a type 2 action. There's no further activity under SECRA required. And we just have a reminder in the memorandum about the title of plans, keeping them consistent. There was a discrepancy between the survey submitted and some of the plans, namely the lighting plan, where it showed the fence in different locations. That should be clarified by the applicant. Another thing, it's minor. I can tell in looking at the actual plan. I know it's in there somewhere.
The survey?
Yeah, the lighting plan. It's in there somewhere. It's probably down towards the end. You'll see it. Yeah. But anyway, I just wanted to show you on the lighting plan real quick. I think that might be it. Yep, that's it. So this is a minor point, but I just wanted to show you the actual site and the lighting plan as well. So these are basically existing posts with post lights. They're proposing to replace them. Again, a different fixture should be chosen. This is actually the edge of the parking lot over here around the perimeter of the site. It looks like it was just an error that they put these 3 lights here. The existing light posts are here. I think that those were intended to be there, but that's another minor thing that should be.
It's an error on the survey.
Well, that's the lighting plan. Yeah, and they just need to correct it, but they need to choose other fixtures anyway. So basically, the application is incomplete. The planning department doesn't see this as a major project, provided that they provide code conformant and planning board guideline conformant lighting, and provided that they effectively block off that created parking area, which, as I understand it, was not these applicants, it was a neighbor. But as long as they correct that situation and you're okay with the split rail fence and the ARB is, then, the application will be complete once that's done. And again, you can waive the public hearing on this application if you choose to.
Did you have a question?
Just to clarify, and I kind of got figured out, where exactly is the fence parking issue? The south?
Yeah, you can even see it on this aerial. You see this little tan area that was created right here? And again, the lines on the GIS are not exact. So you can see it on survey, but this little area here was basically, and it's my understanding, it's neither here nor there, because this is the subject property. It's my understanding that the neighbors did this, not the applicants themselves, but this area was to remain, natural vegetation as a buffer around the facility. By doing this, they've now gone over the clearing. They're also not in conformance with the previous site plan application. I think the easiest thing to do, and I think that's what the applicants are proposing, is to remedy it, revegetate it, block it off with a split rail fence, put up no parking signs, and remedy the problem.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Joan McGivern for Toomey Latham for the applicant. I have Sheila Rogers here, the executive director for the East Hampton Healthcare Foundation, and Drew Bennett to discuss the lighting. The culprit was Carissa's Bakery that cleared the 600 square feet and put in trees and ripped out part of the wire fence that had been put up to prevent the parking in the right of way. The wire fence is about 2 feet into the right of way, so we'll remedy that by putting up a split rail fence all the way through. And Sheila may wish to say a few words, and Drew may wish to say a few words on the lighting.
Sure. So I'm Sheila Rogers. I had met with the owner of Carissa's Bakery, and I brought out the site plan to show her, brought out a tape measure, and we measured from the curb of the parking lot to the end of the setback. And I showed her that we were 15 feet, and that was our property. And she insisted that I was mistaken, and that property that she cleared was her property because it was behind her building, even though it was ours. And so after a couple of months of nothing getting remedied, I decided that I would put up a fence temporarily until we could resolve it. And about a week after we put the fence up, somebody took part of the fence down so that the customers could park in that little parking spot. So we really need to resolve this. We don't like being in violation of the code. We've been on that property for over 20 years. We've never had a problem with any of our tenants or anybody that we've had behind us, and we'd like to see this resolved. Thank you. Yes, we do.
Yeah. We're going to set timeframes that will expedite that.
Great, thank you.
So then.
Good evening, Bennett. So we need to make some adjustments to the lighting plan. We appreciate the comments from Mr. Marcos. Just in big picture, we're proposing what we refer to as Kim era post lights. They're 10 feet high, have the hoop. Same lights you see in Herrick Park on North Main Street. We've used them at St. Michael's. We've used them at a number of locations. They're great for this application, so we'll work with Mr. Wu and trying to work out some of the technical details of that. And I would ask the board to perhaps, if we can work that out with staff, and then they can report back to you that they're satisfied, if that would satisfy the board rather than having to come, so it's something, so I'm making that as a suggestion. We also met with Sheila this morning, and we're going to make a change to the bollard lighting and probably reduce the number of bollard lights as well, so, okay.
Hey, Drew, I have a question. It's Ed Krug. Is lighting part of this application because there was a code violation?
No, actually, thank you for pointing that out, actually. The reason the lighting is being retrofitted and some additional bollard lights are being added is because the parking lot is really dark. And Sheila feels it's not at the right lighting level that it needs to be for a public facility, particularly a medical facility. So we're trying to improve the lighting of the parking lot.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So I hear what you've said about the boundary line and that you have a disagreement about the boundary. Just wondering, has it been stated that?
So for the fence aspect of this, we're proposing to take down the metal fence that's there that's slightly over the property line. We're proposing to remove that. We're proposing to have it staked by a surveyor, and we're proposing to replace it with a split rail fence.
So Drew, another question. I'm sorry, Randy.
It is staked. Okay,
Yes,
sorry.
and I submitted the revised survey with the state.
When I was there, it hadn't been staked, so I apologize.
I have another question for you on that subject, Drew. So how far is the edge of, will the edge of pavement be to where the split rail fence will be? How much?
It's approximately 3 feet.
That's all it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's not within the 20-foot right-of-way that the fire marshal is concerned with. So it won't impede on the 20-foot right-of-way that's required for access behind the buildings. So it'll be clearly on Healthcare Foundation property. We'll verify that with the staking, and it won't impede the right-of-way at all.
And since you already had a question, and you are the board's point person on this, we should continue.
Yeah, so I'll just keep going then. This is a really unfortunate situation in a lot of ways, right? And I appreciate your frustration, Sheila. You can't have rogue parkers on your property for lots of different reasons. It's really too bad because as everybody who likes Smoking Wolf and Chris's and Luigi's knows, the parking situation back there is really bad, right? But nonetheless, obviously the situation has to be remedied. So I think it certainly makes a lot of sense to me. It's pretty straightforward in that regard. Did I just see though on that plan that the split rail fence doesn't actually carry across to the area that is now in question where the rogue parking is happening?
Yeah, just as well, if you don't mind.
Right, because isn't the parking that we're talking about?
Just to clarify, there's a survey that's prepared by, I think it's Fox Surveying.
Yes.
And then there's a lighting plan and a fence plan that's prepared by myself.
Okay.
And the two are not in sync, and that's one of the things that we need to adjust. So
all right, so is that split rail fence, does it go farther east along that?
If you look at the lighting plan that I prepared,
yeah,
you will see that it goes farther enough east.
Okay. All right, because obviously the plan we just were looking at, it doesn't. It would sort of allow someone to
from here.
Oh, I see. On this one, it is all the way across. Yeah.
165 linear feet.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. All right. Yeah. Listen, I think this is this is probably the right solution as long as you can work with staff to get the lighting issues resolved. I have no other real comments. I think it's pretty straightforward.
So let me just ask, because it's an issue we're going to all have to come to an agreement on. How do you feel about the public hearing on this?
I actually don't think we need a public hearing on this.
Right, let me put it up to the board. Does anybody else have any comment they wish to make on this? Anybody? All right, the only thing I'm going to say is I would like to just raise the possibility of a public hearing on this, not because I want to slow things down, cause any consternation here, but we heard that there's a problem with the neighbor, and I'd be a little that the neighbor, who may or may not be within their rights. I'm not making any judgment on that one way or the other, but I be a little wary about waiving the public hearing just on that. And please, Ms. McGivern.
Well, I think with the ARB, because we have to go in front of the
Oh,
ARB,
they're gonna,
They won't have a hearing.
no, they don't have.
they won't have a hearing. Okay, I was thinking we could short circuit things. Never mind.
You know, Sam, you raise a good point. I'm changing my point of view on that. There should be a public hearing.
Only raising the issue, I'm not,
No, I think it's a very good point that you've made.
All right, let's go through the questions, and mercifully, the public hearing is the last one. There's no time to chew that over. Planning board should discuss the appropriate method of amending the cleared areas for parking, either through revegetation or signage and fencing. Does anyone have any comment on that regard? And then regard, are we satisfied with what we've seen?
It's good.
Eric likes it. I like it.
I like how you think. I'm gonna make a flash. You're gonna hold that up anytime. Yeah, right. Eric approved. Should the applicant submit lighting details that comply with the town's lighting guidelines and the planning board's guidelines for exterior lighting? And I think that we've heard that already, so that's all right. And now, just put it to the table. Should we waive the public hearing? I'll let Ed go first. I think
I've changed my position to no. There should be a public hearing.
Me? Yeah, no, you convinced me, Sam. I was in Ed's camp when he first said it, but with the neighbor disputes, it might be a good idea.
Randy?
I agree with Ed and Sharon. Maybe it'll be good for the applicant too to have it all done in public, and this is the boundary, this is what's published.
I'm with the old Ed. I don't think that the public hearing is necessary. I like the new Ed too.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Well, yeah, I agree with Ian. And the reason that I agree is because it's a matter, the dispute is a matter of record. It's a technical item that is either yes or no. There's no gray area there. So I don't really feel that.
I agree, and for all the same reasons that, the property line is the property line. There's professional surveyors. They're not going to put the fence, in the wrong place. So I think it's straightforward. I don't know what could be said.
There could be an adverse possession.
1 year. Only 1 year.
Only 1 year?
I'm with New Ian. I don't think there should be, it is, it's 2 + 2 is 4. It is an exact line there. So I say no.
I'm going to go with the new Sam. Which I find remarkably consistent. No, the reason I mentioned, the reason I raised it, and the reason I think it's necessary is because while, there's been mention made of a neighbor with an issue. And in my view, anytime there's an issue with a neighbor, I don't want the board to knowingly make a ruling without at least giving them an opportunity. It isn't so much a matter of either the board, either the line is right or the line is wrong, but we've heard in public certain things stated about the neighbor, and I'll give the neighbor the opportunity to be heard, and we can take it into consideration or not, but I do think it's necessary. So I think we've got unless anyone wants to change it, well, they're certainly welcome to do that. Anyone? We're 4-3 on the public hearing. Okay?
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Do you see a reason for us not to proceed to the ARB?
I think you're fine too, but you probably want to amend the plans first.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. We had another matter on called Adamadeo and Cositas, which is in. All right, we are going to now move into the public hearing that is scheduled for tonight. I'll read in the public hearing notice. It's now, by the way, 7:15. Please take notice that a public hearing will be held before the East Hampton Town Planning Board at Town Hall, 159 Panago Road, East Hampton, on Wednesday, June 8th, 2022 at 7 p.m. or as soon thereafter as this matter may be heard, to consider the application of South Essex Corner Site Plan Special Permit approval pursuant to Articles 5 and 6 of Chapter 255 of the East Hampton Town Code to construct a two-story, 2,000 square foot building with first floor retail end deck, a second-story apartment with a porch, and an unfinished basement. The property contains 9,645 square feet, 0.2214 of an acre, and is located on the west side of South Essex Street, Montauk, and is situate in a central business zoning district as shown on the official zoning map of the town of East Hampton and is identified on the Suffolk County tax map as parcel number 300-49-1-13.1. Subject application is classified as a type 2 action pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act, Part 617 of the New York Code of Rules and Regulations, in Chapter 128, Environmental Quality Review of the Town Code. The survey prepared by George Mulford Surveyors PC, dated revised February 16, 2021. The site plan prepared by George Mulford Surveyors PC, dated revised January 12, 2022. A set of plans prepared by Jeffrey Sands Architect, dated revised January 18, 2022, including exterior lighting plan A010, foundation plan A100, first floor plan A110, second floor plan A120, elevations A200, elevations A210, elevations A220, and elevations A230. A planting plan prepared by East End Land Planning, dated revised October 27, 2021. A set of plans prepared by Jeffrey Sands Architect, dated January 22, 2021, including 3D renderings Sunset A001 and 3D renderings Midday. Proposed sanitary system and details prepared by Edward Honest Engineering P. LLC, dated revised January 21, 2021. Pavement surface schedule prepared by Edward Honest Engineering P. LLC, dated revised December 21, 2021, are available for inspection at the Planning Board Office, Suite 103, 300 Panago Place, East Hampton, New York, dated May 11, 2022. Samuel Kramer, Chairman. Do we have jurisdiction over the application?
Yes, we do, Chair. I reviewed the affidavit of mailing and posting, and it does appear that it was properly noticed.
Very well. Thank you very much.
Okay. Just to give you an overview of the plans, what you see in front of you right now is the main site plan based off of a survey. I apologize, it's a little distorted and difficult to see, but what you will see is there's the principal building right there is basically square. It's a two basically 1,000 square foot retail units with a slightly over 1,000 square foot second story apartment, which would be registered affordable, required to be by the town code. Obviously, as you can see, this is a corner lot in downtown Montauk, in the northeastern section of downtown Montauk by the post office. The applicants are proposing parking in the right-of-way, which can be seen at the bottom of the screen, and then the use of what is a town alleyway to the rear to accommodate the rest of the parking that will be on the actual site itself. Besides this site plan, we also have a full set of building plans and a full comprehensive site landscaping plan. And I see nobody in the audience, but if there's someone on the phone that would like to see them, just say so, and I can help you and put them up on the screen for you.
Very well. We do have a poll on the screen. Let me just see, let me just ask LTV if they have any comment. Anybody waiting to speak on this application? Matt?
You have 0 callers right now. Thank you.
Very well. In that case, the applicant may wish to be heard.
Good evening, Brian Locascio with the Adam Miller Group, attorney for the applicant. I'm here on behalf of Andrew Strong, who could not make it today. As stated, property is 97 South Essex Street. This property's been before you for some time. It has ARB and zoning board approval for the site plan. With the direction of your comments, we've relocated the sidewalk. We've put in the 6-foot high poured concrete curb to deal with drainage on the eastern property. And we also did the architectural design in a way to have minimal windows with the residential side along South Essex Street. We've made modifications to the handicap ramp pursuant to the fire marshal's comments. And we have a re-veg plan that situates trees along the South Essex side to, as much as possible, screen from the residential adjoining neighborhood. Otherwise, I'm happy to answer any questions you have. And otherwise, Yeah, yep. Otherwise, yeah.
Thank you very much. All right, we need to make a motion to close the public hearing?
Yeah, if you have nothing to add.
No, well,
Aren't we still leaving them open?
we're leaving it open for public comment, for written comment, correct?
Under the hybrid, is that?
Yeah, that's
Yeah, I
right.
believe so. That was, I kind of missed that when you read the notice. It
Yeah,
says
no,
that, right?
that's what I'm kind of looking for.
It just pretty much changed.
All right, I tell you what, I make a motion that the public, that the public spoken comment portion of the public hearing be closed, and that the record remain open for 2 weeks to allow written comment. Written comment should be sent to the planning board's office at 300 Panago Place. I bring that motion and ask if there's a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, in that case, the spoken portion of the public hearing is closed, and the record will remain open for 2 weeks to allow written comment.
Thank you very much. Have a good night, everyone.
Have a great night. Okay, now, before we move on to the regular meeting, or we call the regular meeting, we're going to engage tonight in the first night of what will be an ongoing conversation regarding groundwater protection. It's no secret that this is an issue that comes up on nearly every application, certainly on every major application. And we are often faced with questions, the board is often faced with questions about what can we do about it. And, groundwater has multiple layers of jurisdiction, impacted, I should say, but multiple layers of jurisdiction, sub-county, federal regulations, depending on where the bodies of water or the water is. But we, as the East Hampton Town Planning Board, are governed most closely by the East Hampton Town Code. And so I think that in the context of a discussion of what can we do about this, about groundwater issues, and I think a good starting place is to be educated as to what can we do now under the law? What are our, what are the state rules, but it's not the rules, it's what is the code, what is the law. So this, as I say, this is not a one and done. We're going to come back to this issue as often as we think we need to until this board has an understanding of what the law is, what the issues that we face are, that's not but what the issues are with which we must deal, how should we deal with them, and finally, what changes, modifications should be made to the town code to better enable the planning board to review applications and subdivisions and whatever else comes before us as a planning board with effective tools in the town code to address these issues. We're faced with things like cesspools and antiquated sewage systems and all kinds of problems that lead to groundwater issues. And sometimes we can do something about it, sometimes we can't. And what I would like to see is at the end of the process, that this planning board is able to recommend to the town board legislation in the form of changes to the town code that will allow the planning board, when applications come before it, to add more than adequately, but to effectively address the groundwater issues that come along with these applications. So, like I said, this is not one and done tonight. We're going to be back at this, but I think that tonight we should start with where are we now? That having been said, I'm going to turn over the floor to Eric. Eric's got some prepared comments and stuff to show us.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a very formal presentation. We're kind of kicking off this idea of, when the planning board does find itself with some extra time on its agenda, having this discussion, because it will be fruitful for future applications. I mean, this is not the first time that we've heard about, that the planning board has felt that they have not been empowered by the town code to address issues related to groundwater adequately. Lou brought up in one of the applications this evening that perhaps the board wants to have a policy where they ask for information about sanitary systems on all site plans. That's something that's not codified. It's something that is questionable in a given application, whether or not you have a nexus that triggers a sanitary upgrade. I'm going to, for a second, just focus on sanitary stuff because I think that is generally, presents the biggest danger to groundwater, that aspect of a site plan application that you'll see. So I guess maybe what I want to do too is put up, I had sent out to the board members just some various sections of the code that relate to groundwater. I'm going to kind of go through them a little bit. But basically, what I had sent you, and I'll put it up on the screen too. I'm not going to go line by line, but just to help the discussion here. So what I'm going to go to first is Chapter 210, which is the chapter of the town code that deals with sanitary systems. That's the section of the code that requires, that's where you'll find the triggers that require mandatory upgrades, exempt upgrades, and basically gives you definitions and things of that sort. So again, I'm not going to go through this all here. The first word in the definitions, though, there is something to keep in mind, cesspool. That came up in one of our site plan applications at the last meeting. What is a cesspool? But anyway, what you'll see in this code as you go through it, and again, I'm not going to line by line, but this is basically what says, this is where in the code it says, if you need a building permit under certain circumstances, you must upgrade. And that is basically right here, what you see, which is B, says, in addition, says basically, and then basically it says in addition to A is, any new sanitary system. And a couple other things, but basically the 1 through 5 here are the triggers. Most of them are pretty easy to understand. Any new building and any new sanitary system now needs to be a low nitrogen system. Any voluntary replacement, so any new system has to be a low nitrogen system. A substantial expansion, and that is something that when we get deeper into this, you guys should consider more. This 210, the sanitary section, was worded specifically to use that term, substantial expansion, because it's something that exists in the zoning code. Generally speaking, it's been when you've increased a building's square footage, gross floor area, by more than 50%. There's also an evaluation there, or I should say there is another side of that where they evaluate the property. And if you've increased the value of the property by more than 50%, that is also a substantial expansion. That's why I say that's one to key on, because it's a little bit vague. It's a little bit up to interpretation. So that's something that we should look into more. What I'm going to do is skip part 4 here and go just right to 5. It says, all non-residential properties that require site plan review pursuant to, and so it's giving you a code section that nobody knows right offhand. That is basically, well, one of those is a conversion. If you're converting a house to a resort use or something like that, which you rarely see. But basically those other 2 sections are almost everything that you see. A new commercial building, a new, or a substantial expansion of a commercial facility. There's also something in there that's another thing to key on, which one of those, the 2, 4, and 5 there, that subsection, says that, what am I going with the other upgrades? I'll come back to it in a second. But basically that is almost saying, that says 99% of the applications that you get that are site plan applications, if they are doing a substantial expansion, they're doing a new use, or they're changing the use on site so as to increase parking or increase sanitary flow. That triggers the upgrade. And I'll just skip back real quick to 4, which says all large capacity cesspools. We found this out recently with another application that the EPA has a definition for large capacity cesspools. It is any non-residential, well, any sanitary system. Trying to think of how to not put the cart before the horse. A sanitary system consisting of cesspools that serves a commercial use that is for more than 20 people. So like if you have a 100-seat restaurant, that triggers it. Cesspools, just to make the clarification, I think most of you know this, but basically the difference between having a septic tank or the bacteria containing element of a low nitrogen sanitary system, a tank that collects effluent, whether it be treated or not, allows that to decompose and then distributes it to leaching pools or leaching galleys that will go into the groundwater. Cesspools are essentially just a leaching pool. And they're antiquated. You won't find many of them that are less than 30 years old. But when you find them, they're more than 30 years old, and that's part of the problem. But they leach directly into the groundwater. There's no treatment, whether it be active treatment from bacteria like you have in a low nitrogen system, or just the regular decomposition of what we'd call a conventional sanitary system. But so I give you a packet of a whole bunch of code sections. I think what you guys should really focus on, and again, we're just starting this conversation, is what is a substantial expansion, and how does that affect the triggering of a sanitary system upgrade? And then I think also what you might want to look at is part 5 there, which is the triggers, where if you need a site plan, what triggers you to upgrade the sanitary system. I would think that I'm gathering from the comments I've heard from this board on other applications that you may feel that they are too lenient, that there are other situations that truly do warrant the upgrading of the system. I would agree with you. I think as we go along through this process, we'll kind of hammer those out. And I think that's sort of ultimately the goal, is to highlight things for the town board that may require code changes. So I guess I'm gonna kind of just stop ranting there for a second. The other things that I gave you are the planning board's groundwater protection policy. I'm just going to show that real quick. And you'll see on the version that I sent to you, which is the most updated version, that hasn't been updated for 15 to 20 years. Again, the groundwater protection policy, that it's a bit of a misnomer. That sounds like it's some kind of all-encompassing term of here's how we're going to protect groundwater. This is really only design guidelines, and they were really for buildings, and they were really only intended for industrial buildings. So this is something where you have a service commercial use, a repair garage where you know there's going to be fuel oil, something like that, well, fuel and oil, being spilt on the ground. Basically, if you read through these specs, it says, an epoxy coating on the floor, a pitch to the floor to collect any spills. I'm pretty sure most of the board members here are familiar with it. But again, originally, the scope of this was very narrow. It was just to the design of industrial buildings. And also, this version here is the last version, was from 2004.
This is a planning board policy, right? Thus, it does not have the incriminatory law.
That's correct.
So if somebody wanted to say, I'm not going to follow that, we would have no teeth to enforce that policy, assuming we want. So we would need, in order for these policies, I'm not saying, they're good, bad, or different, but in order to enforce them, they really need to be part of the town code. But in order for the building department to enforce them, they would also need to be part of the town code.
Unless the policy that you're referring to can be supported by something that's in the town code.
But then what you're doing is you're requiring our town attorney's office to draw a line and to say, and to make a legal argument that it's in the policy, and and the policy is derived from some magic words in the code, as opposed to having the very words that are in the policy.
No, but I would
To use
just,
the code.
I would just skip over the policy altogether and just go right to the code.
Are you saying put the policy,
I mean,
make the policy the code?
No, I would, if I'm reviewing a site plan, I have the policy in my head, I'm familiar with it. I can use it or not, I can use my own intuition or my own guidance. I can also refer to the policy, but what I'm using to enforce or to have the applicant do or not do certain things is the code. I realize that I can only use the code, and I'm restricted by what's in the code. It's not my, it's not my whim or my wish. It has to be supported by the code.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is if you, and again, I want to divert from the conversation into some arcane conversation about laws and, laws versus code, but if it's a policy, then in order for it to be able to withstand someone disputing, and my concern is that, we have certain, well, let me ask you, Eric, do we have situations where people say, I'm not gonna follow that policy? When they come into you and you say, the floor has to be thus and such, and they roll their eyes or stamp their fists and say, I'm not gonna do that. Does that happen?
I can't recall somebody taking that stance, like a hard line, no, I just absolutely won't do it. I can recall though, first of all, you've had a number of site plan applications that were for buildings that were already built and they wanted to change the use. I'm thinking of one that was approved as a service commercial use, but years ago, before this policy was adopted. So the building was built, designed without any of those specifications. And then they came into you and they wanted to change the use. They wanted to make it a repair garage, which is also an industrial use. But in looking at it, the board recognized this building was built before the groundwater protection policy. This building doesn't need it. That application has stalled a bit, but it's definitely in the record that the applicant is to come up with a means of remedying it and retrofitting the building. That's a good segue into, I remember we had one very, very large building on Industrial Road in Waynescott that was built and was approved to meet the groundwater protection policy. It was a very big building and it was difficult for them to do it. Some of the pitch, if I remember, was incorrect on it. The town attorney at the time met with the applicant, worked to come up with something that met the spirit of the groundwater protection policy, epoxying it. So that was one where, we checked it, the board required that they meet the policy, checked it, proved it with that as a condition, and the applicant built something else. So we had to come up with some way to do it. But the direct answer to your question, I haven't heard anybody completely, be averse to meeting it. It's just that we've had situations where, whether it's a retrofit of an old building or them building it wrong, where they certainly weren't willing to say, well, I'll knock the building down and build a new one. You know what I mean? They wanted, so that's really the difficulty we found with it and enforcing it.
My concern, and I don't have any preconception about this. I just, my analysis is that if it's a code, if it's a law, then we know it's going to have to apply every time. Whereas if it's a policy and it's up to the planning department on a case-by-case basis to, are we going to enforce a policy or not, then we run into the problem of arbitrariness. And we certainly don't.
I think, I get your point, but I have something that I'd like to address tonight, whenever.
Well, I mean, what I'd like for tonight is to talk about the law. I know that there are, it's multifaceted. Yeah. I see Ian's also chopping.
Well, I just think that, the groundwater protection policy, frankly, has not been a big issue, whereas septics have. And groundwater is a huge topic, so I think we're at risk of going folks on a detail when there might be.
I want to narrow in on a particular item that I think should be made part of the policy right away. And I think there's good reason that we can do that. Keeping in mind that we have to go by the code. It's not something that we're we want to make happen, but something that I think the code will allow us to do. And that is that every application that comes in front of us, we need to know what kind of septic system they have. And it seems that we're not doing that, and there's no reason why we shouldn't. And that would help solve a lot of problems, because there's a lot of failing systems out there that could just, pass us by without us knowing it. And it's causing a lot of groundwater pollution and surface water pollution as well. So, as I stated in my memo that I sent out to everyone, I think, that we should require an independent engineer's report showing what kind of system that's in the ground. Or if they can get a certificate from the Suffolk County Health Department, which shows what kind of system. At least we know what they have. If it's a failing system, we'll know, and then we can take appropriate action according to the code.
Well, that's the question. If we know that there's, let's say that it's adopted, and every time an applicant comes in, they have to give us, I guess, the status of their septic system. Is there any mechanism in the code right now to compel?
Yeah, I think so. I think if you go by section 1A-7, which is the protection of natural resources, I'll just read it quickly, it's not that long. It shall be unlawful for any person directly or indirectly to cause or allow the discharge of toxic or radioactive substances, industrial waste, sewage, I underline sewage, or other contaminants into the air, water, or earth in quantities or characteristics or for such duration which cause or are likely to cause detriment to health, safety, welfare, property, surface water, or groundwater. I mean, that's specific. It's right in the code. You cannot do that. You're prohibited from allowing sewage to go into the earth and contaminate groundwater or surface water. So if the system is doing that, and there's also in the code an inspection protocol to determine that as well. It gives the power to Natural Resources Director, the building inspector, and if we ever hire a sanitary inspector. So we have the means to inspect, we have the means to determine whether there's a failing system, and we have the law that says if it is failing, they can't do that. So I don't understand why we don't, because this is an issue that is so important. It's one of the three major issues that this challenge that this town is facing. Affordable housing, the sanitary issue, and what's the third one? No, not there's another. But anyway, it's a major issue, and I don't see why we can't just put all of our forces to try to.
Well, what I want to know is well, when the plan.
Coastal road.
Coastal,
yeah. Sorry.
That minor issue.
Right.
Yeah,
no, but you get my point. So I'd like to see what other people think about what I just said about, enforcing it in this matter. We don't have to change the law. And there's a lot of things in the code that need to be changed, which we could get to. But for now, dealing with what we have in place, the only thing that I'm asking for is that we make it a matter of practice that for every application that comes in front of us, we request to see what kind of system they have in the ground.
What do you do when you have that kind of situation? That's what I'd like.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's evolved over the years as it's become more and more of an issue, and we've changed the code more and more to empower the boards to require sanitary upgrades. But for the most part, when we do background, most commercial facilities don't have incredibly antiquated cesspools. Most of the time when you go and you look at, the property card and the records of a individual lot, you'll see that there's a record of a sanitary upgrade. Now, that's usually 20 years ago, something like that, and it's a conventional system. It's probably not a cesspool. But if the project doesn't trigger anything that requires a sanitary upgrade, it's usually something that, the legal team would tell us there's not a nexus between requesting it. That being said, what Lou just said, well, it's one thing if you want to make it policy to ask for the existing sanitary details on every site, regardless of the application, regardless of the scale, regardless of what they're asking for. We will absolutely make that a point in every evaluation that we do. That being said, if you are allowed to waive any site plan elements if you want. So it would be a matter of policy saying we're not going to do that for the information about existing sanitary systems. But just so you know, just while the concept of policy versus code or law is brought up, that is in the code right now. Necessary elements of site plan, which is 255, 650 I, is unusually oddly embraces brevity for a town code. It says, this is everything you need to add: existing and proposed sewage disposal systems.
Yeah.
So it's already in the code.
I would propose expanding that, because you're right, it is too short. And I think it should be made clear exactly what needs to be done in order to meet that particular section.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So if that's already in there, it's like we should just implement, right? And just do it, right? But it would take one of the triggers being present, the current triggers in the code, to do anything about it, however, right? So on that point, if I can just take the floor for a second, I just wanted two questions. One, how unique is the code section that you sent us to East Hampton? Because I know that much of our code, of course, is really based on state. How much of that is unique to us? I'm just curious.
Well, I guess I would say, first of all, I don't know for any of these sections. I have to do more research on that, but I sent you a whole bunch of them. So are you talking about chapter 210, the section that triggers the sanitary upgrades?
Yes, I am. Yeah. In particular. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to go back and look. I mean, that's fairly recent. In fact, the town attorney, who's no longer here, penned most of it. But I can look into that and I can see how it meshes. I know there was a discussion of not the state, but the county health department matching terms. For example, saying innovative or alternative IA versus low nitrogen system. So a lot of it was crafted so that the terms would match what the county regulations are. As far as the triggers go, I don't know if they're one for one or even close, but that's, I made a note and I'll look it up for you.
Yeah, I only ask that to sort of get a feeling for how much leeway we actually have. But here's my real question though. I want to go back to your point 5 on the trigger list. I want to make sure that I really understand that, and forgive me if everybody else already does. But what are those points that would cause under that particular section of the code? What are those additional triggers?
I answered that with an example of an application that was in front of us. And I'm sorry to butt in, but I think this will answer your question.
Should we be talking about specific application?
I would just vaguely, I would say by name.
I won't name the application. But if an application.
We don't make it so apparent that you're.
No, I won't. If an application comes in front of us and they're doing just interior renovations, no expansion, no parking additions, no occupancy additions, everything stays the same. The only thing they're doing is they're gutting the whole inside and making it brand new. If they spend more than 50% of the value of that property, that triggers now normally what they're doing would not trigger according to the code, it wouldn't trigger them having to put in a new IA.
Well, it would though, Lou. I mean, didn't you just say that, Eric? The 50% increase in value?
No, I'm saying normally it wouldn't, except for this 50% valuation.
Yeah. But so I understand points 1 through 4.5. I'm really cloudy on, so forgive me. But I really want to lead this conversation understanding what the current triggers are.
Sure. So I'm going to show you right now. So that part 5 of that previous code section said, and anything that needs site plan pursuant to section 250.
Yeah.
So B 2, 4, and 5, and you can see them highlighted here. So 5, right away, let's just put that aside. That's conversion. That's if you take a home and change it into a resort, or if you take a resort use and condo it out or co-op it. It's something the board does not see very, very common. So starting with 2, I mean, that is the trigger that, that's the thing that triggers a large percentage of the site plan applications you get. They're changing a use. And they're increasing the site parking requirements, or they need approval of a sanitary system from the health department. Then 4, you can see is sort of along those lines. It's an activity or land use which increases occupancy limits of a building or increases the site parking requirements. The whole idea of having those 2 be the triggers that require the upgraded sanitary system is, and you can read between the lines there, more people, uses that are going to affect the amount of people that are there, that are going to increase the occupancy limits. There's going to be more people. You're going to have more stress on the sanitary system. It needs to be upgraded.
Right. Okay, good. That's helpful.
So can we get this thing on the, for every site plan that comes in front of us?
If that is the board's policy and they want, we will tell you definitively on every application what the existing sanitary system is. And if we don't have records on it, we'll say that the applicant should submit.
Great. That's a great start. I think
it is.
How does the board feel about that overall?
It's good.
I think that I would disagree, because in that, when we say any application, that's pretty broad. If somebody comes to install a handicap parking space, and it's a complex site, do we need that? I mean, I agree with this as an issue, and I think that we need to do a better job of making sure we're looking for appropriate projects. I think we should be careful, though. There's applications that have come before us, within the last couple of meetings, where we aren't asking this because it's such a minor thing and unrelated. In fact, maybe even tonight. So I just think we should be careful with, the broad brush of saying everything. I agree that we don't do it enough. I agree that we should do a better job of making sure there's not a very bad system out there. But I don't want to discourage applicants from coming before us for something that's a benefit to everybody. Because once they open that can of worms, I also think we have to be careful about, there's applicants who are multi-million-dollar projects or, really adding value to it. And there's other people who are just a small business or whatever, doing something very minor, that this might be onerous.
There's always the danger of, one of the things that we always have a problem with is that people are afraid to go before the planning board, and not just planning board, the planning board, and because, they're going to trigger a huge expense to themselves. And it undermines the validity of what we do if we create policies that discourage people, applicants from property owners, from seeking the approval of the planning board, because it might trigger a cost to them. And I can imagine that this could be, for many applicants, opening a door to a huge expense. If every single time something happens, they have to worry about, well, if I go before the planning board, I'm going to have to talk about the septic, and that's going to be,
And the other part for me is to make sure that with that information, we could do something that's going to make a difference. Because if we demand the information, and maybe it's a burden, but then we get the information and can't do anything, I'm not sure what's been gained. And that's a question for the attorneys. Now, I think in some cases, Lou, I think we should do a better job. I think we should make sure that, if we're suspicious there's a large capacity cesspool, they should certify that doesn't exist. But I don't think that that's necessarily.
I think with cesspools, I think we've done a good job. I think that's come to the level of awareness that now we look for that. And if we suspect there's a cesspool, I think we're doing a good job there. I'm beyond the cesspool issue. I'm talking about systems that have tank that are failing, that there's not enough groundwater separation and things like that. And I appreciate your comments, Ian, and they're sound, but I think where you and I disagree is not so much on the code or technical issues. I think we disagree on the severity of the problem, the approach that we need to take. I think this problem for the town requires us to become more proactive. I don't think we can, take the position that we don't want to scare people. I think this is more important than that. And as far as it being onerous for the applicant, it could. I know it's not perfect because the records aren't always there, but sometimes all it requires is one phone call to the Suffolk County Health Department. They have a certificate.
Sometimes.
Right there. Yeah, well, I don't know how many times.
You just said a lot of different things though, Lou. You talked about groundwater separation, you talked about how it's functioning. I have no idea what it takes to certify that it's operational. I have a suspicion.
Well, the code has inspection standards. And
I'll say is that is not, that there's at least going to be occasions where that's not a simple phone call. And by the way, I think I disagree with you that I don't think it's a big problem. I do. I think we have to be careful in this kind of general conversation by saying things that sound like, oh, we care, we want to do better, which I agree with you on that. So I'm a little uncomfortable being on the side of saying we shouldn't ask for more. But I also think it's very dangerous to loosely say groundwater separation, pollution, is it functioning? Because none of us know what that entails.
But Ian, that's in the code. All of those things you just said, it's in the code, and it identifies people within the town's agencies that can inspect for those things.
Well, not really. We don't have an inspector right now.
No, it doesn't. And it notes that we don't have one, and in lieu of one, it identifies the building inspector.
But do we know that their expertise is state expertise to do it?
The director of natural resources. I think,
let me say something, because for 15 years, I had a consulting business where we had to go to the health department to get their records, spoil their records for wells and septic systems, because they required you to locate wells and septics on adjacent properties if you wanted to install a new well or you wanted to put a septic system. Sometimes the records that they have, sometimes they have surveys that show a location of a well and a septic. Sometimes they have these old sketches. It's not usually a phone call. It's true. You usually have to go up there and spoil it.
And what if it doesn't exist? And our policy is that it has to exist. What happens then?
Well, I'm thinking that we could say it's not that unreasonable or burdensome to have somebody go to the health department on that tax parcel and request, basically a FOIL request for the existing information on the septic and a well. And it's not expensive. So that's just one. I don't know where we go with that, but that's one thing.
So that would be like a threshold requirement?
That's a fairly easy requirement.
What's the timeline? I mean, I don't disagree with that. What's the timeline? And what if it's a truly minor thing? Like somebody's gonna put a bollard up to stop a parking space from hitting a sidewalk. What do we then wait for the health department to get back to us on something that may or may not exist?
When I was doing this, it was 20 years ago, so I don't know how long.
But what do we deal with those types of applications when they come up? Why prevent us from doing this?
I'm not preventing us from doing it in general. I'm saying,
why resist doing this? Because there might be a couple of applications.
Well, because you refer to all applications, but there's a lot of things.
But let's figure out how we take care of that problem and get this policy in, instead of saying, let's forget about this policy. Let's not.
But I'm not saying that, Lou. I'm saying we should do a better job in a lot of cases, but to be careful.
Right,
you know,
but
all
I'm afraid,
cases.
but I'm afraid if we just say we should do a better job, it just.
No, I want to get through this. I have it right there.
Goes into the ether and nothing ever gets done.
This is what I don't. Okay, I don't want this to go into like, oh,
Yeah.
Eric, what I'd like to know is this. Is it possible to create a delineation of applications from a bollard to prevent somebody from, crashing the car, to building a steel mill? The whole range of possibilities.
Well, we already have that. We're asking to change the law.
And say where, in the planning department's view, there should be applications that will automatically trigger water, groundwater, sanitary review, and applications where, it would be overly burdensome on the applicant. Do you think that it would be within the planning department's abilities to come up with, I'm not saying a black and white, if you're above the line, yes, and below the line, no, but something so that we can get a continuum of the kinds of applications that come before you that might reasonably trigger this kind of review, and others where we can say, all right, come in and do your application, you don't have to worry.
You know what, before you answer that, part of the problem here, I think, is that when you're talking about protecting Long Island's groundwater, you're talking about a bigger subject, like, from a policy perspective, what does Long Island need to do to protect its? Right now, they've already, and I think it actually supports Ruth's argument that the Suffolk County Health Department, the towns, they've all been watching the hen house, and we got a big problem for Suffolk County. So the idea that we don't need to be, careful, especially careful, I think it's been shown that on Long Island, you got to be careful.
I agree, but I agree 100%. And actually, when Lou says, when we say we got to be better, it's neither. I would say the argument I would make is that you guys are saying, you're basically saying we got to be better. I'm saying we have to have specific things so it's consistent and not like, oh, we're going to do better, but maybe make exceptions. Let's talk about when we really have to look at this and when we don't. I agree, it's a huge problem.
Well, part of it is that if from a policy point of view, you're trying to remedy the water pollution problem, it's not just limited to when people come into the planning board with big projects.
But you know what, the thing is, it's a question of, I agree, but it's a question of what can this board do?
What can this board do?
We're not going to cure all water issues.
Well, let me ask you this. Does this board want to be the detective, I think they're going to say no, that uncovers the dysfunctional septic systems by asking for this information?
The answer is actually, okay. You said all, I was thinking right up until you said all. Okay. I think that there's value to this board being active in that regard. I think that when we talk about, when do we have the opportunity? When does an application pass by us and we can say, stop right there? The question is it every single time? And I think there's a lot of danger, and you raised the point, and I kind of muffled around with it, of too broad a brush. Now, I understand that, there's sentiment for each and every time, and there's a certain value in that because you'll catch everything.
And I don't think we even really think, sorry, I'm interrupting. I don't think we actually think that if we look at every detail, because we don't.
Well, what about minors, just your Bollard example? Wouldn't that be a minor site plan?
Yeah, so now we're talking about nuance and detail, which I think that this issue is full of.
Maybe minor site plans.
Well, that's why I raised the question. If it's, and maybe this might be a good place for us to add 804 to urban the conversation and see if for the next time the planning department can come up with a continuum, if you will, of the applications that come before it, and be frank with us and say, listen, these kind of applications, there's no, and confirm with council on this, that because look, what's going to happen is somebody's going to come in with a Bollard, and we're going to say you have to go spend X thousands of dollars on a sewage analysis, and and welcome to the world of litigation. So the idea is that we need, if we're going to develop a policy, and if that policy may be implemented as code, that it has to be rationally based. And so the place to start there, I think, is to go with history and go with what has the planning department, I should say, seen time and time again that we know that this is going to create a problem? And the ones that we can reasonably say, you can put in your application and, you know, and you're not gonna go bankrupt because of it.
Can I just want to say, have a little spiel, short spiel.
George Bale said,
That really supports Rue's view, and that is that when I look at the code, there are a number of places, not just that site plan, what we can ask for. Let me read you what it says in the special permit. Because on the one hand, we're charged, let me find it. On the one hand, you guys are going to specifics, but on the other hand, we're given these very broad standards. Okay, so it says here, right? These are all special permits that we issue.
Those are the general standards?
The general standards. It says, no special permit shall be granted unless the issuing board shall specifically find, right? Mr. Lawyer, shall specifically find and determine that, then it lists some, and one of them is adequate provision can and will be made for the collection and disposal of stormwater runoff, sewage, refuse, and other liquid, solid, and gaseous waste, which the proposed use will generate.
Okay, but you're talking about special permits. Okay, I mean, my focus is in my mind.
Okay,
is on site plan more than the special permit.
All right, so special permits may be in the bigger, animal category. You may just say yes with a special permit application.
But it also says specific use, so if there's an existing use that's already approved and somebody's doing a minor thing, I don't think that section implies that we go back into the whole project and tear it apart. So
what if it's a new?
Well, of course.
Yeah. I agree we should do more. I mean, you've got code provisions that require it.
Randy, I don't want to limit it to special permit.
No, he doesn't want to do it. He's just saying.
I also mentioned the H part is very specific.
Right, no, I'm saying this is where the existing code already really says that we have to make these findings.
Yeah.
And
yeah, but again, that's only in the case of special permit. It's not.
Yeah.
It's only beyond that. Come on board site plan.
But Randy, the site, what is it?
It says proposed use though, not existing use, so there, even that, what you just read there, doesn't imply if there's a large 10-acre parcel and a very small change, that we look at the whole site and make sure all of the septic, the groundwater and everything's functioning. That's not what that says. I agree with you generally, we could probably do a better job. This isn't a, do we do something or do we do nothing? I'm not saying we shouldn't do anything because if we do everything, it's too much. I'm saying we should be specific.
Okay, Sam, I think you were going down the right route, and I appreciate Ian's, not resistance, but
not resistance.
Keeping us earthbound, that we don't just go flying off into crazy, general.
I'm only one man though.
This is a balancing thing, I mean, we're going to have strong opinion on one.
We need to do something, and I think you're directed to Eric to come up with something that we could live with that will appease Ian.
Well, actually, what I'm actually expecting is that Eric's going to come up with a list, and those who want everything are going to say, no, we have to have this, and no, we have to have that, and we'll have a back and forth.
Yes.
And we'll come to a point where we'll have a consensus.
But I want to get on a path that we, at the end of it, that we can see the light, that we will reach some kind of consensus.
That's what I said right at the outset. And go ahead, Eric, and I want to just give Ed, Sharon, and Michael, who hasn't spoken, an opportunity to. Actually, let that man off.
Yeah, I'll go around real quick.
Ed, do you have anything you want to add on this?
Yeah, well, I think I've made my feelings about this pretty clear. I think that there's enough in the existing language of both policy and code for us to be pursuing this in the first place. There's enough there. I think we could act pretty quickly with something. It does occur to me that we are I think that the next step that you've suggested, Sam, of Eric putting together a continuum of things for which this would apply and others where it wouldn't. I think that we're definitely within our rights to establish this as an element of a site plan review. But we always have the opportunity to waive an element of a site plan review.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Right.
That's true.
I think we'd be guided by the continuum that Eric's going to put together. But I think we need to, we can argue about this all night, but I think we need that, definition in front of us to really have a conversation.
The idea of the continuum, and I don't know if that's the right word, but it's what we're using, is to get us started in this conversation.
Yes.
And ultimately we come up with the policy that presumably is found somewhere in that continuum. Sharon, did you have something now?
No, I agree. I think having a little bit of a guideline from the planning department would be helpful, and a little more nuanced approach is probably the right way to go.
So Sam, before at this stage, I know where you're at and what you're saying. This is the first bite, but there's one other thing I want to say before we close.
Let me get mine over, and then you will have the opportunity to close, and then Eric will have the opportunity to close.
I have nothing to add, but I just, all night, and even when this topic was first presented, I keep looking at the septic incentives that the town and the state and the county offer. And, up to $50,000 are available to upgrade your system. So that's the carrot. That's the carrot that's out there.
Yes.
Sometimes this carrot and stick thing is a completely messed up metaphor. So, has anyone ever seen a mule chase a carrot? Yeah, they say carrot and stick. Like there's the carrot over here and the stick over there. No, it's the carrot on a stick.
The cupcake. In my case, that would be more effective.
I was thinking a cupcake. I want to go to dinner, so go ahead.
All right, so in looking at what you said, we want to see what's there now, what's there now. And the other thing I see that's there, in addition to what Lou, you've mentioned, and Eric, you've mentioned, that is that in the special permit criteria, in the site plan criteria, but also in the overlay districts. Whenever we have an application that's in the Harbor Protection District, the Groundwater Protection District, the Flood Hazard District, they have this language in their purposes. Like Flood Hazard District says, on-site waste disposal systems shall be located to avoid impairment to them or contamination from them during the flooding.
We do that, right? And we do that.
Well, we do, but I don't think I'm always aware that in these, they're very exalted, purposes in these overlay districts.
But I think they all relate to water.
And they do.
We would do that with a new system or a new project. I think the issue is in that, Harbor Overlay District, if someone wants to put a bike rack up, do we do the same thing? All I'm saying is let's start talking. I think we should do more. I think we should be specific about what we ask for and when. I just don't think, the notion of, we can waive it, require it all the time. I think that's a really slippery slope.
Well, and finally, I just want to throw in SECRA, because one of the things too, it says in a lot of the overlay districts, it says that they're, like in the groundwater district, so it's automatically what's it called, a critical environmental area.
I think you're going for it. It goes on the type 1 list. We added any variance from clearing standards in harbor protection and water recharge as a type 1, a more serious action under secret. Is that where you're going?
No,
well, you mentioned secret, so I was wondering.
Yeah, no, it actually says in some of these overlay districts, any application within this overlay district shall be a critical action under secret, pursuant to 128 of the town code.
Well, sure, that makes sense.
But I don't know that we are always aware that when we get an application in harbor protection or groundwater or coastal erosion or flood, that it's automatically a critical environmental area under secret.
You may be right about that, yeah, but and that's maybe not the tip of our, tongue twister.
So there's another existing, it's already in.
Let's see what we can do, in the issues that we're faced with on a daily basis, a week, 5 basis.
Let me very quickly 3 points. First of all, I heard everybody's comments. I'm taking notes. I think I know what to do here. And I think I can come back to you guys in probably a couple of weeks because we have meetings next week and then the week after that are going to be a little bit involved. So we're looking probably at the July, I think it's 13th or something like that meeting. I'll come back with something. I heard your comments. I think I have some ideas of, to kind of workshop the issue.
Yeah,
Say, here's this application. Would you ask for this? Would you ask for this? These criteria.
That might be a very good way to do it.
Yeah, and here's what we've done in the past, and here's what we did on this stuff.
So a few empirical examples. Anonymous empirical examples.
I know where you're going. And then also, Randy, I think this is sort of the point you were making, although, you're right, those sections apply. But this right here, every time you guys read a resolution and approve an application, you quote your standards and you have to find that it meets your standards. Right there, when you go to the bottom, that says it right there. Every application you review, I realize the first few terms there don't apply, but provisions for protection and for sewage and waste disposal are adequate for the use, will ensure the health and safety of persons on and off the site, and will not result in the avoidable depletion or degradation of the groundwater supply or harm to surface water bodies, watercourses, wetlands. Yeah. That right there, you have to find that every application is not going to adversely affect groundwater. Yeah, sorry. But anyway, so to that point, it's already there.
Standard that we need to comply with.
On every app. It could be, it doesn't matter if it's minor, it doesn't matter if it's the biggest.
It's a question of how we get it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think you set out the creed to Eric as to what to do, how we can get creed. So it's bad. That's
I forget.
And then, anyway, the one last thing I wanted to mention was, I believe we're going to try to get a expert in this field to come and speak to the planning board. That will almost certainly also count towards your educational requirement. But I have some names of some individuals from some various entities and different groups, engineers, environmental advocates that I've inquired. I haven't received an answer yet, so I can't give you a date or a name. But we're going to have somebody come here soon to speak to the board and answer questions about groundwater. Hopefully somebody with a broader knowledge outside of just the town, other municipalities, the county as a whole. That's such a useful thing because, this way we're talking on the basis of some information, some valuable information from someone who actually, for a living or as a profession, knows what they're talking about.
Somebody knows more than Lou and me?
If they can find. We may have to go to the other side of Town Line Road to get them, but.
Not gonna be fun.
Well, look, Randy, guess what? You've got about 7 of the 8 things.
Pretty cool.
I'm gonna depend upon you to read.
Can I just say one more thing?
I'm sorry.
Look, I think this is a great conversation. I'm happy we're having it. I don't want to be the person who seems like I don't want to talk about it. I do. I think it's incredibly productive. I also think longer term, after this next, task that Eric's doing for us, we should think about what is actionable. Because just uncovering stuff where we can do nothing about it and don't make any actual difference, it gets us somewhere, but not all the way. So I think longer term, 2-3 conversations from now, we should start to make sure that the information we get is something we can use to do something.
And let me use the word actionable. I use the word actionable in a different sense, in the sense that I use, which is I don't want us to create causes of action that people are going to sue us over because we created an impossible situation for applicants. Now, what I want, and this is not something we have to deal with now, but before the end of the process, let's make sure, and you're going to have environmental experts, maybe we can have one of the many legal experts on this come in and speak to us and tell us you're opening yourselves up to,
Well,
Brazilian
awareness,
Article
though.
78.
You can make an argument for just awareness, even if it's not actually.
Like somebody like Dan Russo would be like.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, Dan or somebody, but we
Or,
could.
Eric, can we get an expert that can guide us as to what more we can do to make sure that, we contribute to the remediation of this water pollution process?
Yeah, I mean, that's the kind of person I'm looking for.
Just making people aware, like a lot of people don't know this guy. We had an applicant tonight, Michelle.
No, let's not do this. I mean, I'm not sure. Let's not, I don't want to go about any, look.
When we don't require that somebody tell us what they've got.
Yeah,
we don't know what they've got.
No.
They may be contributing to the problem.
Well, look, the whole thing is, this is going to raise awareness. It's going to become part of the thing that people have to think about.
The whole audience knows about it now.
And now, anyone who's, our vast LTV audience. All right, we are now going out of our work session / educational process, and Randy is going to lead as fast as humanly possible.
Doesn't matter what order?
Well, the list here, it's easier for me if you follow the list.
Okay, the list, name, type of resolution.
Buckskill Farm.
Okay, so Buckskill Farm, I'm gonna say, we have a letter which I forwarded to the town attorney, you and I got it today.
If it came in today?
Yeah, it raises an interesting point, which I think the board already covered. It says that if we're eliminating condition 5, to which Nancy, this says the applicant shall perform common driveway improvements specified in the map. We eliminate that, that's fine. So with the letter we got today, it said if you eliminate the requirement for a common driveway easement, which serves 3 vacant lots to town hall, we don't want to do that.
But I'm going to access them.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, we're not doing that anyway. We're just not doing anything with the easement itself.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so Nancy, I think I.
Right, yeah, I saw that. Yeah, no, it was a good letter, and we're not touching the easement.
No, that I understood.
Okay, all right, so in the matter of the application of Buckskill Farm final subdivision, Suffolk County Tax Map 300, 193, 3, 11.1, 11.6, 11.9, formerly 300, 193, 3, 11.1. Planning board has reviewed the required determination and desires to modify certain provisions of the approval as set forth in this resolution. Except as modified herein, the determination is reaffirmed in all respect. I've read the resolution and move for its adoption.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? 7-0. Next one that you have is Panago Hill Farm.
In the matter of the application of Panago Hill final subdivision extension of time by resolution adopted October 24, 2018 and subsequently extended September 11, 2019, December 2nd, 2020, and August 18, 2021. The planning board granted final approval of the mentioned subject to various conditions. The applicant, by form received May 18, 2022, Daniel Weaver, agent for the applicant, has informed the planning board that additional time is needed in order to meet the conditions. Read the resolution and move for its adoption.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Yes, 7-0. Next one is Sharon. It's Spencer Oaks, Sharon.
Oh, okay. In the matter of the application of Spencer Oaks preliminary subdivision tax map number 300 182-2-5.1 7.1. This is for an extension of time. I've read through the resolution and move for its adoption.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? 7-0. Okay, the next one is, was 2 Nick Cohen Artist Studios. This is the one on the site plan.
I think, I think they're identical. I looked down.
Why don't you make a motion on both of them at the same time?
I think,
They're not identical.
oh,
What?
They're not identical.
no, they're not. One is site plan and
One
one.
is the artist studio, one is the site plan.
Okay. Where's the art studio?
Yeah.
Amending approval. Artist studio, I have. I don't have site plan.
All right, in the matter of the application of the Nick Cohen Artist Studio site plan, Essex County tax map 300-94-2-10. This is, I've read the resolution and I move for its adoption. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Yes, okay. You know what, I'll do the other, I'll do the other one. So get them out of the way, and then we can move on. Matt, this is the artist studio only. The other one we just did was the site plan. In the matter of the application, Nick Cohen Artist Studio, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-94-2-10. I've read the resolution amending approval and move for its adoption. So the second. Second. Thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passed 7-0. And Randy, go ahead with the Oceanside Beach Resort.
Okay. Then prior to this, we had some discussion about the covenants and covenants.
Okay, yeah, let me address that. Yeah, because there has been some public discussion about that. The intention of this application is to allow this one.
Yeah, right, that we discussed that, Britain, we wanted, did you see the letter I sent to our planning department on it?
Educate.
Basically, you know, there was a, we talked about the covenant, we wanted to make.
Oh, there's a letter you also.
Yeah, right, yeah. And there was an editorial in the Star about it, that maybe the proposed, it wasn't even a covenant they gave us, it was just more like a list of things that they should.
Thank you, yeah, no, this is the letter you and I talked about.
Right, exactly, right.
So we're very.
So prior to the public hearing, we requested that they give us the intent of what this app is gonna be, you know, how when it's gonna be used, and, you know, kind of made it strongly clear that we only want it when the place is open, and it's only for overnight guests, not just for, you know, like boat guests that are just popping in for like a lunch or something.
Right.
So that hopefully we'll get that well in advance of the public hearing.
Right.
So it'll be on the record and.
Right, the idea is this, there's, this board has dealt with for 3 years at least, the issue of a food service at this application, and and there were modifications, substantial modifications made by the applicant to reflect that food service would only be available to guests of the hotel and on catered or public events that are subject to the mass gathering applications. And there's been some concern that the language of, and this is the important part, of proposed covenants and restrictions was not reflective of what this board's intentions, as I believe they were stated at the most recent couple of meetings on this issue. And again, that regardless of the language in any existing proposed application, that covenant needs to be vetted and agreed to between counsel for the applicant and the planning board's counsel, and then presented to this board. And the board will review it, and if it is consistent with what this board wants, then it will be presumably, if it would then be approved. If it's not consistent with what this board wants, then I would expect that the board would say, no, this is not what we want, and we're not going to approve it. Now, again, and this is the important part, we're talking at this moment in time, the existing document that we've heard about is not the final document. When we get to the point of a final document, we'll talk about that. And the intention of this letter and the intention of this board is that when we have the public hearing that we're going in a moment vote presumably to have, at that time, there will be a document that this board agrees with as the covenant. And then the public can come in and say, no, you guys got it wrong.
Right.
And we'll, if they're right, if they're kind of wrong, then we'll change.
So Sam, when
Sometime between now and July, well, I'll read the thing.
Yeah, what's reasonable for us to expect a final draft in the public file? At what, when this is published, when it's.
Well, all right, you're asking about how fast can an attorney get something done? Oh, two attorneys working it, isn't it?
Yeah,
Which,
the letter went out to the applicant today, and, it's in her best interest to get it in.
so the answer is this, we've got 2 more meetings at least before the July 13th meeting. Presumably, council can meet with council, and by, at the worst, what would that be, the June 22nd meeting, because we don't have one on June 29th, and we don't have one on July 6th, right? We don't have a July 6th. So presumably, at the June 22nd meeting, even though it is already destined to be mostly about Wainscott, we can certainly talk Wainscott Commercial Center. We will certainly bring this up so that we understand what the language is that has been proposed and presumably agreed to between council. And then when the public hearing is conducted, the public will know that this is the language that the board, at least as of July 13th, when I have the public hearing, approves.
Will make a condition, right, I'm just thinking process now. We would normally approve the site plan and say a condition of approval is that they record a covenant acceptable to the council and the board. Right? So we would normally go ahead with an approval assuming that a covenant will be drafted. Here, I think because this covenant is so important, we're trying to move it up.
Well, no. What we're doing is we're going to have a draft ready on July 13th, but that may not, like I say, the public may come in and say, you guys are nuts, and tell us that, and we will look at it and say, we're nuts, and come up with a new covenant.
Well, there's always a public hearing and a wrap up. We have been doing more of this, so we want to see the covenants to make sure that what we intend is, it's not the first time. And for this particular application, at the last meeting, we said we need to work on it. So this isn't something.
Yeah, there's no support.
I think to the point when we get something before us that is better than we have, hopefully the attorneys agree on. We hear from the public, then we have a discussion, and then there's the approval.
Right. Yeah, no. And just to be clear, what will be before us, right, exactly. Yeah, the very important thing. On July 13th, we'll have something that presumably we like, but it doesn't mean it's done. And if the public says to us, you still don't get it right, then we'll back to the drawing board.
Okay.
All right. So with that said, in the matter of the you want me to do it or you want? Go ahead. In the matter of the application, the motions I read resort renovation site plan special permit as Suffolk County Tax Map 300-47-2-10.1. This is a resolution to schedule a public hearing for Wednesday, July 13th at 7 p.m. or as soon thereafter as the matter may be heard to consider the application. The public hearing will be heard here at Town Hall, 159 Panago Road, East Hampton, New York. I move for the adoption of this resolution to schedule a public hearing. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Yes. You guys both said yes, right?
Yep.
Yes. Thanks. 7-0. Mike, wrap us up.
There's one more after? Oh, no, you got it.
No, that's it. You're done.
All right. In the matter of the application of 92 Spring Close Highway Site Plan, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-166-4-1.4, schedule a public hearing. The public hearing will be hereby scheduled to be held at Town Hall 159 Panago Road, East Hampton, on Wednesday, July 13, 2022 at 7 p.m. or soon thereafter, as this matter may be heard to consider said application. I've read the application resolution. I move for its adoption.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 7-0. All right, folks. Thank you very much. Listen. It was a more wide range, not more wide range, but this was a wide range discussion. First discussion. Thank you. No. Listen. This is water is important.
Good stuff. Thanks. See you guys.
Motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor? Any opposed?